Well, as a federal law enforcement officer, my next guest has helped a lot of victims of human trafficking and child exploitation. But what they really needed was legal help. And what he did for them is the reason he's this week's Huck's Hero.
It's been my experience that when you deal with a trafficking survivor, they have a variety of legal needs when they come out of an exploitation scenario. The Joseph Project was founded on the premise that every identifiable human trafficking survivor should be connected with skilled pro bono legal counsel. To connect a survivor not just with a lawyer, but with a lawyer who is most and best positioned to be able to serve the specific need that exists.
Having those charges on my record was like a nightmare. Every time, which your background is ran when you get an apartment, it's ran when you get a job, and it prevents me from moving on.
What's so cool about the Joseph Project is they tie everything that the survivor has been through to trafficking. And so when you call and say, hey, we have this situation, this is a survivor of human trafficking, it's easy for me to explain, and they're like, oh, where's my pen? I'm signing the dismissal. It's super cool to hear how relieved they get.
I'm just overcome with gratitude. I'm so grateful that the past is really over and that I'm walking in my purpose.
The power of an advocate is so poignant in this system, this arrangement, that I think that if you communicated that to somebody that's still out there in need of these services, I think it would be a point of hope for them, that there's an option for me, there's a way out.
He's the founder of the Joseph Project, a federal law enforcement officer. Would you please give a big welcome to our Huck's hero, Nate Knapper. Nate, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Where does the name Joseph Project come from?
Yeah, the name, this is the story from the biblical book of Genesis, right? So it's the person with the colored coat, who I assume your audience will know very well. And, when we think of Joseph, we think of a human trafficking survivor, right? This is a person who was sold into Egyptian slavery by his own brothers. We might say he was commercially exploited for labor services through force. But what you learn as you read the narrative of Joseph is that while his circumstances go from bad to worse, you have a God who's with him at every step of the way. And because of that, he's able to keep faith, he's able to persevere, and ultimately he finds himself second in command of the entire nation of Egypt. So he lives his dreams from earlier in his life, and he forgives his brothers who trafficked him along the way. And so, when we think of his story, we think of a survivor who transitioned, right, from exploitation to empowerment. And that's the transition that we want to facilitate for every survivor of trafficking that we serve.
One of the things that makes your organization so unique, and I'd never really thought about it before, a person who has been trafficked, they need legal help.
They do.
They need lawyers to help them in that transition. I don't know of anyone else who's doing that. So what kind of legal help is so vital for these people who have been treated like property, like things, like toys? It's just awful to think of how they've been dealt with. What is it that can be helpful to them from a legal perspective?
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of it, right? So not only are you being exploited, you're being trafficked, but then when you come out of an exploitation scenario, you are then immediately confronted with what we would call legal collateral damage. This is the damage that comes to you from a legal perspective as a result of human trafficking. And many times it looks like criminal record relief. There are criminal issues that arise on a person's record as a result of being trafficked. So these are things like prostitution-related charges that need to be expunged or set aside from a person's record. Perhaps you could request an expungement or even a pardon in some cases from a governor or even a president if the situation arose. So you have criminal record issues that arise. And then we see a lot of family law issues as well. And oftentimes that takes the form of a person who is separated from their child, for example, as a result of being trafficked, and now they've come out of that lifestyle and they're seeking to reestablish custody with their child, perhaps. So we see criminal and family law issues quite a bit.
I think it is sometimes lost on us how big an issue trafficking is of human beings. Because if we're not living in the middle of it, if we don't have someone in their family or immediate, we may not understand just how big this is. So how big is this issue in America today?
Sure. Well, it's big around the world. It's big in the United States of America. I think the ILO would estimate 40 million slaves around the world today.
40 million.
Around the world.
Around the world.
Yep, that's the International Labor Organization. So it's obviously a huge, huge number. And we know that there are thousands and thousands of those slaves that exist right here in the United States of America. And, you know, this is National Anti-Trafficking Month. And so when you think about the fact that our federal government is taking time and taking an effort to recognize that this is a big problem and it's something that should be confronted with all the force, all the rigor that we have, I think that's a beautiful thing, that we should push back against that kind of modern day slavery. It's a darkness that needs to be weeded out.
What was your personal genesis of getting into this and wanting to help these kids? What made you say, I got to do something?
Yeah, it was really my interactions with a survivor that I had met actually at a church service. You know, I was working as a federal law enforcement officer, and I encountered a survivor, and she had a horrific story of exploitation, worse than most that I had ever heard. She was stabbed, I think, 9 times. She was attempted to have drowned her in the bathtub, and then they spoke of burning her alive.
Oh my gosh.
And eventually, her exploiter determined that she was so injured and close to death that she was going to die right in the apartment there where they were, unless he took her to the hospital. And so he drives her to a local hospital and leaves her on the doorstep and drives away. Now, the hospital treats her for her injuries, and thank God she made a full recovery. But she was charged the medical bills associated with her own assault. And she doesn't know anything about that. And so when she doesn't have the means to pay those charges, the hospital starts coordinating with a collection agency and a law firm to sue her for the bills associated with her own assault.
For being a victim of crime.
For being a victim of crime, that's right. And it's more common than you might think. And so, you know, I was able to connect her, thank God, with a couple of incredible lawyers in the Detroit area. Matt and Amanda Pallitz are their names. And they were able to resolve the whole situation. Delynn is doing much better today. Her name is Delynn, a friend of mine. I know she would be comfortable with me sharing. And Amanda Pallitz is the legal director of the Joseph Project today. So that was our very first case.
I'd say you're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, thank you.
God bless you. Nate, thank you for joining us and for the work that you're doing through the Joseph Project. I know that you're going to want to learn more about what they're doing. I hope that you will help them. And here's how to do it. Get involved by going to Huckabee.tv. On the website, there is going to be a link to the Joseph Project, and I hope that you will join with them. Thank the Lord for what you are doing, Nate.
Thank you so much, Governor.
No doubt why he's our Huck's hero tonight.